Hey, everybody, what's going on? I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. For those of you who are watching the Olympics, they got off to a rather strange start. Strange is probably a very polite way of putting it. They got off to a very woke start with drag queens, actually, which we had told you about on Friday, that they were going to be taking part in the opening ceremony. We said there was going to be a drag queen torchbearer, but little did we know that it was going to be so much more insane than what we even expected. It was a group of drag queens, actually, depicting the Last Supper in the opening ceremony. Obviously, Christians from all around the world completely outraged because this is making fun of Christianity. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You have drag queens, which in certain religions would not even be acceptable by the standards, and you have them depicting a religious scene. This was not a parody. This was completely for real, and something that the Olympic Committee obviously thought would resonate with its audience and with Olympic fans and athletes from around the world. Obviously, it did not. And in fact, one former Olympian, Caitlyn Jenner, who is trans, sounded off about what an egregious display by the Olympic Committee, saying, quote, "Absolutely not. A disgusting display of mockery of one of the most holy and sacred images of our Christian faith by the least tolerant demographic in the world, the radical rainbow mafia. Shameful." I think Caitlyn Jenner kind of summed it up. Yeah, this is definitely one of the most sacred images in all of Christianity or Catholicism. I don't imagine anyone around the world would have expected this. I mean, maybe, yes, we would have expected, like we said, there was going to be a trans or drag queen torchbearer, fine. If you must include the element in the opening ceremony, it's one person, and you know, it's not really doing anything, maybe rubs some people the wrong way just because they are not about that. But this isn't making fun or creating a mockery of a certain religious sect. Obviously, a lot of people were outraged. Caitlyn Jenner, we just mentioned, being one of them. A lot of aftermath in the wake of what had occurred. The organizers of the Paris Olympics, they came out and apologized for the opening ceremonies. And the question is, why would they do that? You know, they decided, they probably made this plan months ago. I mean, you have to have rehearsals. You have to have the people in place. You know, you have to hire people to take part in the opening ceremonies because obviously these aren't Olympic athletes. So these are people either they found in Paris, I have no idea, or they flew in from around the world. I have no idea, but you had to put this in place a long time ago to make sure everything was set. This was a major event, again, that only occurs every couple of years, Olympic-wise. So why did the Olympic organizers decide to apologize? Because they were losing money. For example, there's a company called Ceasefire. This is a small wireless company, but still a advertiser for the Paris Olympics. They posted on X shortly after the opening ceremony and saying, quote, "We were shocked by the mockery of the Last Supper during the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. Ceasefire will be pulling our advertising from the Olympics." I have to imagine there were probably more advertisers as well. And you notice that everyone that is expressing disbelief about what they saw, they're calling it a mockery. Caitlyn Jenner called it a mockery. Ceasefire called it a mockery because that's exactly what it is, right? There's no other way to put it. This is definitely making fun of Christianity. The creative director of the opening ceremony, in the wake of the apology coming, saying, "My quote wasn't the wish to be submersive, nor to mock or to shock. First of all, I wanted to send a message of love, a message of inclusion, and not at all to divide." And I just don't understand how Thomas Jolly, this is who the Olympics opening ceremony artistic director is. Again, artistic director, you have to put all these pieces to the puzzle in place a long time before. A message of love, inclusion, and not at all to divide. Well, in that case, you probably shouldn't have represented, again, which was said before, one of the holiest scenes in all of Christianity and represented it by drag queens. I mean, if you really wanted to drive a message of love, then maybe you could have done some element where you represent all of the different religions that represent the athletes that are taking part in the Olympic Games. So if you wanted to do a Last Supper type scene, you could have had real actors who portrayed very closely to who actually was sitting at the Last Supper. And then maybe you do some other scenes to appeal to the other religions of the athletes and the fans that are watching from around the world. Now, of course, there was one person who absolutely loved the mockery of the drag queens reenacting the Last Supper, and no one will be surprised here. That would be none other than Dr. Jill Biden. Yes, we'll call her doctor for now. She's going through a lot right now, you guys, so we'll still let her keep her doctor title, even though we know it's a complete farce. She said that it was going to be hard for the USA to top this scene in 2028. And it just completely baffles me where she would pull that out from. Hard to top. I mean, as we have already seen, the Olympics have already pulled their opening ceremonies from YouTube. You can't find them on Peacock. You can't find them on social media barely, unless someone has grabbed the recording of them and put them up on a site where it's hard to control. It's hard to really find them. And that's because there was clearly some obscene parts, not just the, straightforward scene that we were presented. But if you looked closely, these drag queens that were reenacting the Last Supper, there was a snippet in which you could see one of the performers' exposed parts. I think you know what exposed parts I'm talking about. It was a picture while they were standing, but it was very visible. It was lewd, it was crude, it was disgusting, and just one further reason why the Olympic Committee got it completely wrong when they decided to go in this direction. But the ironic part about all of this, and we'll take it as a sign, we have to take it as a sign, because somebody clearly is watching and paying attention, somebody that has a power and force over all of us that we absolutely can't control. That is that there was a power outage in Paris the night of the Olympic ceremony. All of the lights went out in Paris. There was actually an amazing photo online that if you want to go check it out, it just looks like complete darkness. There's one light that is very vividly shining. Where was that? That was the Sacré-Cœur Church. That is a huge monument. If you're a tourist, if you've ever been to Paris, you've probably visited the church. I know I've been there. Those lights did not go out. What's to, I guess, credit for all of the power outage, except for the one major Catholic church in the area? I don't know, you tell me. But clearly this was the wrong move. I mean, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to know this. It's not about not supporting the trans community. It's just the fact that if they wanted to support the trans community and were very set on including the community in the opening ceremonies, there were plenty of other ways to do it. Like we said on Friday, there was going to be a drag queen torchbearer, which, great. There's a great representation right alongside other major athletes that are playing in the U.S. Games and in the Olympic Games in general. But this just wasn't it. Christians around the world are furious. They're outraged, and they have every right to be. So while we have clear context that the world is going woke, feels like we get a new example absolutely every day. Not all Americans are afraid to stand up for what's right. We won't even keep that at Americans. There's lots of people around the globe that aren't afraid to stand up for what's right. So my next guest, fired from his job coaching track at Lake Oswego High School in Oregon for, listen to this, suggesting trans athletes should have their own league and compete against each other. I think that sounds reasonable, don't you? So without further ado, let's welcome in Coach John Parks. He is the former track coach, of course, in the Lake Oswego School District, and also Buck Dougherty, senior counsel for the Liberty Justice Center. Gentlemen, good morning. How are you both?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so obviously, judging by my opening story, we see the direction that the world is going in, and it feels like most people aren't allowed to say anything. You either get on board with the radical ideology that's being pushed, or there are consequences. And John, I want to start from the beginning here with what happened with you, because this just has all transpired in the past couple of months. In May, you wrote a letter to the Oregon School Activities Association suggesting they adopt a similar policy to World Aquatics, which, if we look at that policy, allows an open gender league for anyone who does not identify with their biological sex. By June, that's a month later, you no longer had your job. And let's also give some context that you have been coaching all different levels of track and field up to the ultra elite for decades now. Suddenly you're out of a job. Did you have any idea that even suggesting such a thing would lead to such repercussions?
No, none at all. It was a shock that just making that suggestion would lead to these consequences, and especially since I'd gotten prior permission from my athletic director to provide this letter, or to email.
Was the athletic director shocked as well then? Because, I mean, obviously he thought it was appropriate enough for you to suggest such a thing, which, as a bystander, someone on the outside, I can't imagine how you would receive so much backlash to go to the full extent of firing you from your job that you held for such a long time.
He gave me, not only did he give me prior permission, he gave me support following it when he had received a confirmation of the email being received by the associate director at the OSAA. But then we really never talked about it. I asked him about there's an investigation. He said, yeah, I can't tell you anything. And I said, oh, okay, all right. And then that was that. And then we've not spoken since. So it was kind of like he was kept in the dark about it. I really don't know his feelings personally. But that was a shock to me that we can just be so dismissive of the right to speak up for girls. That's what stunned me in this whole thing. It's like they were all out to protect the transgender athlete, but there was no consideration of what about the girls, which is the whole reason why I wrote the email in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Buck, obviously they said that they fired John on the basis of violating the school's harassment policy, denying him an appeal. I know that you now all have filed a lawsuit, and we'll get to that in just a second, but did this seem off to you? Or, I mean, obviously being with the Liberty Justice Center, you probably see cases like this all the time around the country, but did something seem off in this particular situation, or would it pretty much is what you're used to at this point?
Well, it definitely seemed off. I mean, this appeared to us to be a clear First Amendment retaliation case. The Supreme Court over 50 years ago said that public employees like Coach Parks do not shed their constitutional rights just because they accept public employment. And so Coach Parks wrote this email as a private citizen. And as you mentioned, he is an elite track and field coach and has been for decades, and suggested to the OSAA a change in their policy, and just simply echoed basically what world athletic organizations everywhere have already adopted when it comes to the transgender athlete debate. And that is, there's usually an evidence-based requirement for world athletic organizations when they determine if transgender athletes, particularly those that are born biological male, if they are allowed to participate against natural-born females. And he simply suggested an open division. There was nothing in his email to the OSAA that contained hate speech or was anti-trans. He was simply, as a coach, looking to formulate the best solution for athletes, for all of the athletes, both transgender and non-transgender. And for that, for speaking and expressing his opinion, he was terminated.
Yeah, and as a direct quote from you, you said Coach Parks was retaliated against, falsely accused of discriminatory behavior, denied an appeal, and fired just for exercising his constitutional right to free speech as a private citizen. Therefore, after all of that pretty much sums it up quite well. The Liberty Justice Center has now filed a lawsuit against the school district for this behavior. And now I wonder what's going to happen. Like, have you heard anything? When do they have to respond by? Do you believe that John is going to get his job back? And then John will ask you the same question.
We certainly hope that he's going to get his job back, and you're right. A few days ago, we filed a First Amendment retaliation lawsuit against both the Lake Oswego School Board and school district, seeking to reinstate Coach Parks to his position as head track and field coach. We also sought money damages. So there will be a time period where the board and district will have an opportunity to respond. We also anticipate filing additional filings soon in August, because school starts, we're already in August, and school starts right after Labor Day at Lake Oswego. So we certainly want to try to get our filings in to court, by mid-August, hopefully, and then to try to get a preliminary injunction to get Coach Parks reinstated to his position. This is a classic First Amendment retaliation from the Pickering versus Board of Education case. As I mentioned, in 1968, this is nothing new, and public employers, school districts cannot do this. They cannot cancel teachers and coaches when they speak out as a private citizen on a matter of public concern.
Yeah, and John, I'm just curious, because now it feels like probably the whole school is probably well aware of this letter that you wrote, but when you originally wrote it, I don't imagine it was such a public issue. It probably was sent directly to the school district, mentioning this could be a strong idea to consider. And then, am I correct there? This feels like something that could have been a simple, hey, right now we're not going to consider anything like that. Thank you for your suggestion. And obviously you have, no hatred in your heart for the trans community. I mean, even you've said you're a staunch advocate for this community, and them having the best opportunities that lead to them having the most success. I want to also get to that in a few minutes, but this feels like an issue that became much more public when really it could have just been met with a simple, no, that's not something we'll consider at this point in time.
Well, the irony of it was the school district was fine with the letter, said so. My principal even confirmed that in a conversation I had with her 2 days before the state meet. It became an issue a little over a week after the state meet, when they had received a letter from the Portland Public Schools District, which had been a complaint issued by the athletic director there. Now, it should be noted that athletic director is, on the OSAA board, so carried extra weight. Probably that's how he acquired the letter. The OSAA executive director had confirmed to another news reporter that the letter was totally fine, and they'd received, many letters. And this is something that's, and I had many people tell me they wrote letters and they said theirs were much more demanding of consequences to change things than mine were, more emphatic to do it sooner. Mine was just an open-ended, let's change this for the future. And it was not written to my district. It was written with approval of my district ahead of time by my athletic director, and my principal was signed off on it. And then they were all fine. We won the state title and everything was great. And then they, basically felt pressure, I think, from what I've been told by another high-ranking coach in the district, the state, closely tied to LO. I don't want to out him, but and he said they just caved, and this Portland Public Schools official was in a position on the OSAA executive board. He's the representative for DEI, and so they probably felt pressure from that, to be honest. And that was, I think, the impetus behind what led to, because the letter wasn't even mentioned as inappropriate when they just got the letter from him that outlined his concerns, and all of his concerns were just kind of a bunch of hearsay and no facts to them, no witnesses and provided, and it was mostly debunked even by my own district when I was told a couple weeks after my interview, asking me about these things that had happened at the state meet or not happened at the state meet. And so then it was on him, on them to, find something that was more consequential. And they went down and found that they said this letter was inappropriate, which I was not. Like they confirmed only in the meeting, did I write the letter? I said, well, yeah, I wrote the letter. Obviously you knew about it. You approved it. So that's the thing in this case that's mystifying, is that it fell because of that.
And John, you said something. So Lake Oswego, where you coach, I mean, it's Lake Oswego School District. Are there different high schools within the school district, or
there's two high schools in the district. It's a smaller suburban district.
Okay, so did the team that you coached win the state title?
Yes.
Okay, so you just won a state title for the school district. You're clearly one of the best track and field coaches in the state. I'm not so up to date. Yeah, so does this feel maybe like?
I was going to say I won the U.S. Track and Field Coaches Association recognizes a state high school coach of the year, and I was recently awarded that for 2024 as well. I won it in 2023 and won it again in 2024.
Okay, so John, you are clearly an incredible coach. You are performing at the best of your potential ability. You just won a state title. Does this feel like, because I know you said there was a lot of pushback from the Portland school district. Do you think maybe there was a little bit of jealousy involved? Maybe this had to do with more of you were owning the competition and they didn't like that. And so they found whatever little tiny thing that they could pull at to take you down. I don't know. I mean, to not have more people come to your support knowing how much of an elite coach that you are, that just seems odd to me, because I feel like there are people in certain positions when other people want them to keep their job. More people come forward to support and say, no, never mind. Let's just let this go. Not a big deal. Maybe if there's someone that they want out, they're more apt to find reasons, maybe such as this. But this just feels weird to me now that you've said that.
Yeah, I'm still mystified as to why they took this path. It's damaged the reputation of the leadership that's made this decision. The community. I mean, I go out in Lake Oswego. I live in the area. I go out in the community and have dinner and are just out coaching on the track. And hundreds now of parents have come up to me and said, "We're behind you. We're fighting for you. Stick it to the district." All these kind of comments. But it goes back to the coaches in the building at Lake Oswego who still support me 100%. And that the more they've heard, the angrier they've gotten with the decision made. And so it's divided the school. And, I've tried to be as transparent as possible so that they know it was nothing else. There's nothing else to it. This is it. And they've made that decision. And so it could be for a variety of reasons. I don't know why the Portland Public Schools felt they need to protest, reach out to me, about me, that some of the things that they said were completely unfounded. And, there's been investigated by my district, by the people that fired me, and found to be those things were in the allegation findings. I've got that, and Buck, I think, provided that in our findings, and we've got that information. I've made it public to other news outlets, and so it's quite mystifying that they've taken this path.
Yeah, and especially the verbiage of your personal opinion that was shared in that letter. Listen, if this was a hate-filled letter, I'm anti-trans, this is not the type of people I want competing on our squad, you literally took the opposite approach, saying that you're a staunch advocate for these types of athletes, but you feel that because of the current policies, there's excessive pressure and national media attention on these trans student athletes.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of twofold in this. One, I see the unfairness to girls of being at the Olympic level and coaching. The uniform up behind me is from the 2012 Olympic 4x1 relay final. The anchor leg was my athlete in London in the 4x1. And the reality of it is I've known that rule, prevents transgender athletes from competing at the elite level, at the Olympic level, U.S. national team level. And in fact, I have a young lady that was the star of our team going to the World Under 20 Championships in Peru in a month. I'm still training her, and that, that young lady beat the transgender athlete at the state meet by 0.15 of a second to set an all-time state record. And that lady was eligible to go on and qualify for the U.S. Nationals out of that meet that was on the same track our state meets at where the Olympic trials were held, and compete in all those events. And the transgender athlete was not eligible. So that kind of drives home the point of there needs to be, as Buck mentioned, a scientific basis to making such decisions. But also, I have transgender athletes on my team at Lake Oswego, and looking at what was happening with the transgender athlete getting faster and faster, and knowing that the young ladies I coach and their parents were upset about this. I knew it was going to cause all kind of commotion at the state meet. It was an angst-filled weekend, and it was not a surprise to me when the athlete was booed. It was shocking and saddening, because what I was advocating for was to prevent that, because you have this outrage of people are outraged because of the rules that the administrators have set, not to what the poor transgender athlete has had to go through. And so by having a separate division, Charlie, what you do is you empower more transgender athletes to feel comfortable to come out. Because right now, I think a lot would feel like, well, I don't want to do so to disadvantage, because I do have a physical advantage. That's been proven by the scientific studies done by the IOC level and the other international sport federations like World Athletics, World Aquatics, etc. And so they've got these policies in place, and the concern at the high school level is, well, not all kids develop at the same age. Well, we still have separate divisions for a reason, and the transgender athletes are fully aware that if they've gone through puberty, they've had an advantage. They have higher testosterone levels, and so that's where they have this advantage that they can't undo. And I've likened it to someone that's we around the world we can condemn illegal drug usage, taking steroids and such, and so we. Because it raises testosterone levels. Well, that's what's happened here, is just naturally a natural born male that then changes to identify as a transgender female is still going to have that advantage, a physical advantage. And they may begin to lessen if they take hormones and do some of those things. And that's what the Nike series of national meets in cross country, indoor and outdoor track require a 1 year hormonal treatment before you can be considered for treatment. I don't know the exact timeline on those things. That's not for me to decide as a track coach, but those are things that I mentioned because it's how it should be addressed, so that the kids are cheered and celebrated for their accomplishments and not booed. And
yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at both perspectives. You have to look at the perspective of the female athletes on the team who are now probably not reaching the levels of success that they ordinarily would, because like we said, scientific disadvantage that cannot be disputed. And then you look at the trans athletes who probably don't feel, maybe even some of them who want to come out for the track and field team, who don't feel comfortable doing so or get booed while they're on the track. I mean, for me, this seems like a very obvious answer. Have an open division. We probably would eliminate so many of the different issues. Now, Buck, from your perspective, if John does get his job back, will he still be able to push for an open division like this, or will he continue to be met with backlash and continually have his job on the line?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, under the First Amendment, a public school teacher always has the constitutional right to speak out on any matter of public concern as a private citizen. That they would not have the First Amendment right to speak out on matters of public concern in their official job duties or official capacities. And in this situation, Coach Parks was not required as part of his job duties to communicate with OSAA and to recommend policies and changes. He did it, and as you heard from him, Coach Parks is an elite track and field coach. He has been coaching for 40 years. He's coached dozens of Olympic athletes, NFL football players. He knows what he's doing. And, we want public employees like Coach Parks to give their expertise and to share their opinions with people, and certainly people in power like the OSAA. It's important to know, we've talked about the evidence-based requirements that a lot of the world athletic organizations require when classifying transgender athletes. The OSAA appears to have one of the more extreme policies, and that is they have an asserted gender policy, which simply means a student athlete can simply verbalize that they're either male or female, and no other questions are asked. They can be placed in that particular division, versus more of an evidence-based approach. And the various sports do it differently, but the IOC has evidence-based, World Aquatics, the World Athletics Council, and that's That's the only thing, as you mentioned, kind of common sense that Coach Parks was suggesting. And this was a win-win that he was proposing to the OSAA, where his natural-born female runners could compete against other natural-born females, and the transgender athletes could have an open division. And it seems logical, and but the school district didn't think so.
Yeah. Before I let you go, John, one last question. If you do get your job back, which fingers crossed, we have enough sensible people who will make that happen soon, because I know the school year's starting, and I know you want to get back in there with your athletes, and your athletes want nothing more to be there back with you. Do you still plan on pushing for this open league for trans athletes, or are you just going to let it go knowing that you've already been through enough as it is?
No, I mean, it would be one of those things where I would maybe have to watch my words in certain settings, but I would definitely be speaking up for women and female athletes. Girls, they need this protection. I will speak up for the transgender athletes that need their own division, so that we can, again, grow their participation in the sport. I think it'd be healthy for them, having had many transgender athletes or transgender students, in class over the years in my teaching. I think that it's important that they have opportunities. And so I just think it's something worth fighting for. And again, the exact specifics of how others should be able to decide that. I just wanted to get the ball rolling and make them think about the consequences to the girls, and then how the consequences are to the transgender boys, as we saw all too well at the state meet in Oregon.
Okay, well, I hope sincerely that you get your job back, because just judging from a very objective standpoint, I don't see how suggesting some type of remedy to fix a problem that you are able to see firsthand better than anybody else in the school district would lead to the repercussions that you've been facing so far. And I'm sorry you've had to go through this, but hopefully cooler heads prevail. Gentlemen, thank you so much to both of you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Appreciate it. Have a good morning.
All right, well, you heard the man. John was an Olympic level coach. Let me be exact when I tell you that he has over 4 decades of coaching experience under his belt. He has trained athletes at the high school, collegiate, and Olympic levels. You saw the jersey uniform on his back wall. That was from London 2012. It's remarkable what he's been able to accomplish, and I have a feeling that hopefully he'll have his job back, because I don't see how these athletes could probably do it without him. But speaking of the Olympics, we obviously know today the women's Team USA in basketball is playing Japan 3:00. But the question is, how will the ratings be? Who is going to be watching, right? Is it going to be lots of viewership? Is it going to be a little bit lower than expected? It's yet to be seen, but we do know one thing. And I think we can be certain about this without the game even having taken place, that Caitlin Clark would have drawn more eyeballs internationally, because she has become such a household name to the game and to the sport in general in the Olympics, than, her not being there. Now, someone else is also realizing that maybe they made a bad choice not putting her on Team USA, and that would be coming from a very important voice in the women's basketball world, Dawn Staley. She's a part of the USWNT selection committee. She's also obviously the head coach at South Carolina. She admits now Caitlin Clark should have been chosen for Team USA, or at least should have been more seriously considered. She said this, quote, "If we had it to do all over again, she would be in really high consideration of making the team, because she is playing head and shoulders above a lot of people." Which she is. She is. We just even saw her in the All-Star game. She almost, set a major record there. She has just been killing it on the court recently. But this is not the first time that Caitlin has been snubbed. And maybe, in fact, this snub by Team USA has been leading her to play to this, next level, this next gear, which she now seems to be reaching. But back in the day, in 2018, she was a high school sophomore. She didn't make the U17 World Cup USA squad. And her coach, who at the time, Kristen Meyer, said that rejection made Clark work even harder in the gym. She was really locked in and driven to get better. So listen, sometimes when someone puts you down, what does that tell you to do? It tells you to fight even harder to make sure the next time around you're the first choice and not just even a consideration. So, yeah, we all know we don't even have to really surmise whether or not Caitlin Clark would have been a strong, welcomed addition to Team USA. But let's get to our final story, also Olympic related, because Olympics are the jam right now, obviously. Olympic Village, the culture surrounding the Olympics is just as, in a way, as fun as the sport itself. Obviously, last week we talked to you about the anti-fun beds. That's what we'll call them, anti-fun beds that they installed in Olympic Village. But now also we're finding more about the accommodations. Coco Gauff, obviously an elite tennis player, she's saying that she is the only one from her squad left in Olympic Village after being forced to live with 10 girls and, get this, 2 bathrooms. Okay, so you can see complete chaos. I mean, women, you get it. 2 bathrooms for 10 women, that's not feasible. And men, you get it, because you see how much time your woman spends in the bathroom getting ready, how much space she takes up. I'm sure when you walk into the bathroom after she's been in there, there's makeup everywhere, hair tools, cosmetics, all the things. So this just is not feasible. I'm sure the Olympic committee also knew. I mean, listen, they try to cut corners cost-wise wherever they can. The Olympics are very expensive to set up. There is limited space in a big city like Paris, which already has a massive population. But to the Olympic Committee, this just isn't it. And I definitely support the girls who decided to ditch these, well, not to par accommodations and go get some hotel rooms. Coco Gauff, though, now is kind of living the high life. Now she's got all this space, it seems, to herself. 1 girl, 2 bathrooms. That's not such a bad ratio. Okay, everybody, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for being here. This was great, right? We had a little bit of everything. More Olympics coming your way. Like I said, don't forget that women's Team USA basketball game on at 3 o'clock today against Japan. We'll see how they fare. We'll see what the viewership is. We'll probably have some more of those numbers by tomorrow or later this week, and we will see what it looks like without the great Caitlin Clark. Everybody have a fantastic day. Follow me at Charlie on TV, and I will see you tomorrow.